So everybody here is, I'm sure they want to see you, but they really want to see their kids who have something displayed for you next door. Let's see. And I'm going to hand it off to Melissa. I'm starting with
Liam, all right, I noticed you guys were silently struggling over here. Tell us about it. Liam, all right, I noticed you guys were silently struggling over here. Tell us about it.
I had to redo the costume because apparently it was too big and maybe too heavy because when you guys started your program, tilting a bit and it was getting cut on stuff. And it just, when we got to here, it just tumbled down. It was like a spear. And literally just came right out of the costume too. So I'm gonna make it a little smaller and try to cut down on weight. So it doesn't just go flying. Put some extra tape.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for coming tonight, folks. I'm Mrs. Belnier, and this is a little snapshot of one of my STEM classes. Liam is a 5th grader, and he's demonstrating for you the process, the problem solving that goes into his project. I have a whole gaggle over there dying to show you their projects. I just wanted to let you know that they are in the process. So we've taken a lot of the focus off of, hey, I brought something to show you and tell you about it. They're in the making phase still. So they're still tweaking, they're still editing their programming. We don't have scissors and tape and everything over there. And so immediately they're like, well, we need this. It's not really makerspace time because this is show time. So they're still trying to tweak. They're interested in your questions. They're interested in your suggestions. They have a lot to show you. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the program because they're going to show you what they're doing. We have a lot of wires back here. So we're going to ask that you folks go around the door this way. We're taking a field trip to, well, it's kind of like a makerspace. They're just not making a huge mess right now. Okay? So we'd love to have you folks come over. And when we come back, we'll just share one slide with you that has what we're grateful for and what we're hoping for. Okay? So we'd like to invite everybody to come around to the other side. All right, so I accidentally skipped over the first slide, which was, so this is Mrs., right? You know, Mrs. Belnier. She is our STEM teacher, and this year we did have a little change in grade 5-6 STEM. So she's going to tell you like I'm going to be really brief because they've already done the best that you could get, okay? So we are doing STEM every other day during the quarter. So each 5th and 6th grade gets, 5th and 6th grader gets a whole quarter, and they come every other day. And what we're finding is that the projects are way more robust because they're not getting a week gap or a 4-day gap in between, you know, coming once a week. They're coming every other day, and so the fire keeps burning, and they keep adding to it. And so one of the really cool things also that I'm finding with this is that they're able to go deeper. In the beginning, they're excited because they're making something and they're looking at 3D stuff and they're using robots, and they don't really know a whole lot in the beginning. But as they get deeper into it, they get attached to the theme, and they are way more engaged in it when I say, hey, read this. They'll actually read it. In the beginning of the STEM quarter, when I say, here, read this, they don't read it. So I'm finding much better engagement in this format, and so it's really working out. The kids are really loving it. They like the making, they like the programming, they want to keep making. They could go all night, okay? It's very hard to get them out of the room. So that's something that, you know, they're really enjoying, and I'm enjoying. I love it. Every day I get to, and I'm missing out on it right now. So, okay, let's go to slide second to the last. I heard second to the last. So second to last. Keep going.
So
yeah. All right. Nope. Keep going. Keep going. They already did that. There we are. Okay. So we're grateful for that master schedule that gives us that STEM every other day. I'm also really fortunate because I get access to the students during their recess time. So I have students that are actually signing up on their own, sending me appointment passes to come in and spend their recess working on their projects. I have kids hitting me up for office hours. They want it every day. I currently only am available every other day, but they want to come every day. They want to keep working on things. So we're grateful for that schedule. We're grateful for the new VEX equipment that we have. They've been working off of old school equipment for many, many years, And now we have the new codables that are Bluetooth codables, so we're very grateful for that. We also have some drones, but with rockets being launched, we figured we would leave the drones back in the room, you know, with all of that. And we're grateful for the 3D printer that we have because it has inspired so many kids to print things that you wouldn't even imagine, okay? So having a 3D printer has been great. They want more of them. They're over there dancing and playing, that's all at them. And I'm also grateful for the STEM budget that I have because I'm able to buy the consumables like the Alka-Seltzer tablets and the capsules that they're using, the rockets, and all the materials that they're using to make their projects, their sets, their costumes, all of that. We're hopeful to continue to maintain the every other day and maybe get 7th grade in that lunch schedule because I have some 6th graders that are at the edge. They're like, it's over this year and they can't come to you at lunch and so all I have is after school and what if I play a sport? So I have that coming my way. So they're like, how do we get to you? So we're hopeful for that. We're hopeful to have a makerspace in the middle school that they can come to during office hours instead of having to come to the elementary. So we're really hopeful for that. And we're hopeful for some more 3D printers because the kids, all they want to do is print, but it takes so long to print something that they could actually set something that's really detailed and it would run all night printing. So they don't really get to see that whole process and only one kid can print at a time. So if I had more printers, I could have more printing at a time and get more kids involved. So that's it in a nutshell, and I appreciate all of your support with the kids and for bringing them here tonight. They've been hitting me up all week about this, so thank you everyone, and thank you folks for visiting and asking questions.
The group really grew over the course of, you know, it was like, oh, I think it's this many, and then we've got a couple more. So I want to thank all the parents,
Thanks,
the
guys.
kids, thank you.
And now we have to take them all home.
Yes, yeah. Alka-Seltzer and film bottles.
Yeah.
All right, so I have just a couple more slides for highlights of the middle school. I also want to take you to a couple of classrooms, in part because I had to bribe a couple of students to be tour guides. So we're going to take another little trip, but then we'll be done. So I think one of the big highlights for this year is we really were intentional about our monthly social emotional learning lessons. We did a survey last year, and we started the year. Every month has a theme. People have been adding like different activities to folders that are already set up on our shared drive. Obviously, first is community building. Then we did anti-bullying because October's anti-bullying month. Gratitude, managing emotions, making and maintaining friendships, dealing with gossip and rumors, which was perfect timing in February, kind of bled over into March because of February break. Resolving conflicts, I think the highlight of that was Mrs. Schultz and the 5th grade team ran an escape room that the kids were just so excited about. There was a bully fever and they had to cure bully fever. April is understanding different perspectives and we're asking the teachers to kind of take the lead. They've got a lot of different activities. There are a lot of ways to to look at understanding different perspectives in the classroom, in your content. So we're asking the teachers to take the lead because quite honestly, our counselors are working really, really hard on master schedule and our rollover to our new student management system. So they need time to do that. They hate it. They hate being in their office working on schedule, but sometimes they have to. May will be mental health awareness, dealing with peer pressure, and then in June will kind of be that self-evaluation, how the year go, that reflection piece. Ms. Essex and Ms. Schultz just went to a virtual training through the New York State School Counselors Association, probably that's the acronyms, and it was on middle school social emotional health, and they thought that they were going to learn some new stuff, and they went through this presentation and they said, Freya, we're doing it. We are further ahead than a lot of middle schools because we've already made this commitment. Our teachers are buying in. Our teachers, they don't mind giving up the time. You know, they rotate it across the team, and it's valuable. It's valuable, and it gets everybody kind of on the same page at a grade level on the team, and kids hear the same message about important topics. No.
Too far.
Oh, I am, okay. Our other highlights, I think the Wellbeing and Belonging Days have been really well received. We've been doing that on the half days, so kind of we've got a crazy schedule anyway. Classes are like 20 minutes a piece. So teams have been coming up with different ideas. They do games, they do coloring, they do puzzles, they do yoga, they do all kinds of stuff. And that's been really well received. The kids like it. The kids ask me, when's our next one? So that is something that we would like to continue. I think big highlight for me was as I was putting in the discipline data for February and then March ended, our discipline referrals are down from this time last year. Specifically in areas that I think are really important, physical misconduct and invasion of personal space. That's like pushy-shovey on the playground. That's not nobody's bleeding, but that's, physical misconduct. So that is down from this same time last year. Intimidation, harassment, or bullying is down. Use of discriminatory language. That was one that last year we struggled with, and we really put a push. There's not a whole lot that I say zero tolerance, but made it clear from the start of the year that we do not allow discriminatory language in school. And the kids heard the message, and also inappropriate language. So apparently kids don't know the difference between inappropriate language and discriminatory language, and that's fine because those referrals for both went down. Another highlight, I think, is spring math, which I think you've heard about a little bit, but kids are really engaged in it. We are seeing gains. Kids are feeling better about math, specifically our 5th and 6th graders who are getting it every day and win. They're practicing skills that they didn't get because COVID, because they were remote, because, for lots of reasons, because the last 3 years has been a little nutty. We, this year, are lucky to have a professional development meeting space. You remember the old furniture that was here? We put that in a classroom that happens to be empty, so we now have not a board table yet. We want a long table. But it's nice to have a meeting space where we can hold, 20 adults can be in the room and get professional development, and we're not taking over the library, and we're not taking over that space that is used throughout the day. We do have a book room upstairs now, so 6th grade has all of their independent reading books, the books for centers, arranged so that teachers can go in and borrow them, and we also use it, it's got tables, so we use it as a small group room for spring math. Like that's one of the areas. It's also used throughout the day. But, and one of our things, this is what I'm excited about. In October, when we had our first Wellbeing and Belonging Day, half day, it was a really beautiful day, and we were trying to figure out how to feed everybody and give recess and whatnot, and we let the 2 grade levels that eat lunch and recess at the same time mingle and choose. You going outside, you eating inside, you eating outside. Don't make a mess. And so once the weather is consistently nice, we are going to try that as we head into spring and the end of the year. So some kids want to be in the cafeteria and they don't want to play outside. Some kids love eating outside. Some kids want to eat in 4.5 minutes and then run around for the other, 36 minutes of recess. They'd rather do that. So that's something that we're looking forward to trying. The kids really did do a great job in October, and they said that they wanted it. So once it's consistently nice, apparently it's going to be 80 next week. So that's something that we're looking forward to. That's what I hear, 80. So those are some of the highlights. The last thing, I want my 2 tour guides, they're ready, to lead the board. I just want to show you a couple of rooms. I don't know if you have been in. Mrs. Holman came over to the building from the elementary school, and Ms. Brott, they're both right next to each other, and we want to show you their rooms.
All right. So, budget update. Just a quick agenda for you guys. We've got the timeline to the adoption. Our final insurance rates came in a bit better than we thought they were going to, which is always a good thing. I do want to talk to all of you about establishing a new capital reserve. We'll talk about the similar budgetary adjustments that we've spoken about before, revenue and expenditures, and then we'll just get down to the nitty-gritty of the $0 budget gap we have, which is always great news, and then Q&As. So throughout today, you're going to see some stuff, if you haven't looked at it already, highlighted in yellow is just a recap of the Q&A that we had the other night when we met with the Budget Committee. I'm happy to go back and cover anything that was, any additional wording on. So here we are today, right there in yellow. The public notice of annual meeting, those are just the dates that they will be in the press. Just notifying the public that we will be having a budget vote in May on the specific date, at the specific time, at the specific location. They give all that information, and then, I'm hoping that the outcome of today is, in addition to that, at the second publication on the 19th, 26th, and then the 8th, we can also put the secondary proposition on the vote for the capital reserve. Okay, and then here we are today on the 6th of, let's hopefully approve a budget, or adopt a budget, I should say. So there are our confirmed increases in health insurance, 5.3 for Highmark, which is significantly lower than we had anticipated initially. It was well over 10. Caremark, we had anticipated from the numbers we received somewhere in the 13 range, so that was higher. CDPHP was down, that was in the 12 range. It's now down in the 8 range, which is good. And then Humana Retiree for the second year in a row is a 0% increase there. So overall, a decent help for us as far as the budget goes. So capital reserves, right? So this is the capital reserve. This is the exact slide that I shared with you guys last year in May when I did my reserves presentation to you all. I'll do the same thing next month. So we have capital reserves. Capital reserves are basically funded by traditionally either leftover money that wasn't spent. So if we budgeted for X dollars, but we only spent Y dollars, the difference can be put, or some of the difference at least, can be put in a capital reserve with Board of Ed approval. This particular capital reserve was established in 2014. It's got a maximum life of 10 years and a maximum amount of $1 million to it. And again, I just described one way we can add money to this capital reserve. Another way that we had traditionally added money to it, you see it at the bottom there, it goes up in increments the last few years of $50,000 a year, is because part of the, and we'll get to it when we get to the revenue side, is we've got a thing called interfund transfer. It's typically $150,000. 50,000 of that is a transfer from the general fund budget to this reserve to fund it annually. The other $100,000 is for the capital outlay project. So this is the old one. This is the one that's going to expire in May of 2014. When it expires, does that mean we can't use it? No, it just means we can't add anything to it. We can still utilize money from it, but we would need voter approval to expend the money from it. So just to recap really quick, it's Board of Ed approval to add money, voter approval to withdraw money. They're the two really big pieces to highlight from that. Does anybody have any questions about our existing reserve? Okay. There we go. All right, so our proposal, much like a lot of other districts in our region, is to establish a new capital reserve. A new capital reserve, the basis of it is it's another way for us to put money away that allows us to lessen the blow to the tax levy on a new capital project. The number $5 million is the maximum proposed amount. Again, that is I've noticed East Greenbush had a 5, Chatham had a 5. 5 seems to be the go-to number for school districts. Just because it's $5 million does not mean that tomorrow I'm going to ask taxpayers for $5 million to drop it into it. That's not how that works. We're not going to take $5 million out of the bank account and putting it in there. That's not how this works. That is the maximum dollar amount that can be added to it. So for example, if I add $5 million, withdraw $1 million on voter approval for a capital project, I still cannot add any money to that capital project, that capital reserve, because we've already added $5 million to it. Okay, so it's not a net amount, it's the total, it's how much is going in. Okay, so that's your cap, is that $5 million number. So what a lot of schools have done in recent years is they've taken excess monies, unappropriated fund balance at the end of the year, and they added that into the reserve, some of it into the reserve with Board of Ed approval. So if we come to the end of the year and let's say we have $2.5 million that we spent under budget, I might come to you guys and suggest, why don't we throw $500,000 into the capital reserve this year? It's not added money from the taxpayers. It's not added money from anywhere else. It's just money the budget was underspent essentially. Okay. So why this is helpful? Again, the biggest selling point is it lessens the blow when we go out for a capital project. Again, some other ways that schools have kind of gotten crafty with it is instead of paying a teacher's salary, for example, out of the general fund one year, they may say, hey, let's pay that with the ARP grant. And we'll put those funds into a capital reserve, just as a way of building it up. Does anybody have any questions about the capital reserve, how it's funded, how money's withdrawn, so on and so forth? Yes.
So if you had 2.5 million, you put 500,000 into.
Hypothetically, yes.
What happens to the other 2 million?
It goes in your unappropriated fund balance. It's your
So
rainy
we can
day
use
for
that.
the school.
Okay.
Fund balance.
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Well, I just, one piece that, just part of our meeting, our committee meeting.
Sure.
One thing it was important for me to understand is that it may never have $5 million.
Correct.
It's just the cap.
That's the
So
cap.
it may never even get there.
Correct. And some of the other language that I worked with James Gregory on potentially proposing is instead of maximum life, using words like probable useful life, so that if we get to year 5 and we're near $5 million, but it's technically year 6, can we still use it? Yes, it says probable. The other thing that we asked them to do is when they draft up their proposition is to say $5 million non-inclusive of interest, so that if this reserve does generate interest, that doesn't count against us as far as the amount of money we can put into it. So if 10 years from now, we're all sitting here and we've yet to tap this capital reserve, and there's $5,250,000 in there, I mean, go us, we just made $250,000 in interest over a 10-year span. I don't know what bank we're at, but that sounds good. But that's just why we would have those excess monies in there, is because we, take advantage of the fact that interest is essentially free money, and it's something that we don't want to hurt us in the long run. Anybody else have questions about this?
Just a comment.
Go ahead.
I think, let the board know that the budget committee, like Ina said, did spend a lot of time looking at this $5 million figure. And one question we had is how are the voters, when they go to vote, going to look at that $5 million? Do we think they'll have enough understanding of what that $5 million entails? And I'm assuming that hopefully through the literature we get out to the voters, they'll do their homework and read all that literature in its entirety, so they'll have an understanding of that. But that was a concern of mine anyway, and I think some other members of the budget committee was, if you're going in to vote and just seeing this for the first time, how you react to that. So we did discuss that in detail, and Ryan helped us through that.
So one of the things on that note, I'm glad you brought that up too, is so Randy reached out to some of his local supers and contacts and asked, like, what are you guys putting in your budget newsletter? Because that's essentially the pamphlet for Please Come Vote, right? And a lot of schools, after reading 3 or 4 of them, they're using the same exact language in their newsletter of basically describing what I just said to you guys out loud of this is not extra money, this is unused budget money that we are repurposing to a purposeful reserve.
In a newsletter, is there a way, or would it make sense to highlight that?
Yep, it's its own section. It's capital reserve own section. I would probably title it maybe Proposition 2, right. Capital Reserve, just so it's, Chatham did it, that's kind of where I got that idea from. And it highlights it in its own section. It's not a line in the middle of this elongated chart that, I like charts, but it's not some line in the middle of that. It's its own section talking just about the cap reserve.
Do you think that what will go into that is enough information for?
So the goal is to make it as simplistic but informational as possible, right? Using giant words, huge sentences, and it's like writing an email to somebody, but it's 15 paragraphs long and nobody's going to read it. So the goal is to be, as I've seen in these newsletters that Randy sent me, was keep it succinct and keep it informational and keep it basic. So that is the goal. The good news is it's not uncommon practice. It's not something we've done here in quite some time, in 10 years. But locally speaking, it's not unheard of. So why I say that is because if you're talking to your cousin that lives in a different district and you're talking about taxes or this, that, or anything else with the budget vote, establishing a capital reserve is not foreign to a lot of people. It is a reality that a lot of other school districts are investing in because it's one of those things where it's a way to put money aside that's completely legal and a way to do it so that it's not a hit on your audit, for example. So like when they come in and say you're over that 4%, this is money less getting us towards that 4% fund balance on the year kind of thing. So it is very beneficial, but one of those things of we gotta get that message out to the public.
Just makes me think
Super
of,
upset
like,
nobody saved my.
it makes me think of like your video that you had created
Sure.
for like something like that, with like a QR code in there that people can scan and watch you present it, or
I dig
you know
it.
what I mean?
That's what I was thinking.
Like I'm like in my brain,
QR
like
code?
Yeah.
QR code?
I'm thinking about like, are we recording this? I was
Yes.
gonna make fun of my parents, but who cares? Hi, mom and dad. So like my dad, for example, like for him to read something like that.
Yep.
Okay. But if he was to watch it and it would click way.
I'm not gonna make fun of your dad because the last time I tried to do that, the galley yelled at me. But it was fun. It was all good fun.
It was
His
good
tie
fun.
clip was amazing. I
It
wanted one.
was. He has dementia. Sometimes he can't help it. But like, so
Yeah.
just trying to reach more
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
Because sometimes
Yeah.
writing it all out,
Visual.
even though it is basic.
Doing it visually. I
information.
gotcha.
He's
QR
there.
QR code.
Does it make sense do you send us the, whatever you're sending out before you send it out?
I can send you out that blurb. I can't send you like the actual budget newsletter because we don't make it in house.
No, just the verbiage.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. I already
Because I
have
think
it, yeah.
we're
We could actually send out, before we say print, we can send
Right.
out the draft PDF
Yeah.
of the newsletter.
But no, I can
I
send
just
it
think
out.
where we're going a little bit is like you ask questions and your answers are really something that I'm gonna understand.
Yeah, no, you're good.
A lot of our questions the other night were like that.
Mhm.
Like, well, what is this for? So, and your explanation would be how
Right.
you'd write that out,
Sure.
which is
That's the
helpful,
goal.
like
Yep.
Paul said.
Right, isn't this essentially an empty fund that we put our loose change into?
Essentially, yeah.
A change jar.
It's a savings account, it's like we're putting money aside for your
Yep.
kids'
So
college. You just-
That's the exact verbiage that's actually used and like I said, it's consistent from district to district to district, and that's what they call it, is your capital reserve is basically a savings account for a capital project. And why it's effective is because it doesn't affect the tax, it's a less of a blow to the tax levy and everything else. All right.
It's fiduciarily responsible.
And this one
We
is
all
an
were good at that as
Keep it
parents, we've
little-
all saved
You
all
can
the
have
money
two,
we needed to
yes.
pay for college when our kids got there. We don't know we didn't do a good job with that, but but if we
You
were,
don't think about that when you're buying diapers, right?
yes, exactly.
Put the change in a jar.
Yeah.
So Tara just asked the question, it was a good one. So you can have two capital reserves. There's one train of thought of, oh, well, we don't want two, we just want one. So let's establish the new one and transfer money over. Keep in mind, if you transfer money over, you just ate into your $5 million amount. So I would suggest keeping both of them open and utilizing this, when the next capital project comes up, because we are in the planning stages of it now. So
Why put a cap on it?
we have to.
Yeah, no requirement.
So there's the actual proposition language that was sent to me from the school attorney. Again, it's a pretty blanket statement that anybody that's establishing a cap reserve uses. Any questions on that?
That's good.
I hate slides that have tons of words on them, so this is like, you're gonna have to kill it right now.
No,
It's not, this is driving me nuts. Okay,
Was there a dark so far?
all right, budgetary adjustments. Oh, did you have a question? What do you got?
Well, no, I don't have a question. I have a comment
Yes.
because those questions are now there because we asked you to
Correct.
add the questions. I don't know if everyone understands that. So after our committee meeting, we asked him to
Highlight on certain topics.
to
Provide
put the
summary on the
questions and
Q&A.
the answers in.
Yep.
So it's all my fault if there's too many words on that slide.
But it made it so that like,
Oh, it's
if
helpful.
I was thinking
Right.
those questions, I didn't have to say
When we
the
post this,
exact same thing that you already.
and also when we post this to our website, they're there.
So we'll separate them out as a separate Q&A for that. On the website, too.
Budgetary adjustments, the top three they've been on previous presentations to you all. The bottom one was a request, and this is just it's for the building safety assessment that we are looking to have done. We did meet the other night. I presented 3 different companies that have been in contact with us. And we are still kind of in the gathering of information. From the one company, we've got a proposal. It's the highest one. We've got a full-fledged proposal, reference checks, everything. They all look good. It's the highest amount out of pocket. The second, what I would consider the secondary option that we have is a newer company that I just today, this morning, got some responses from as far as some folks I can call. One was a place of worship, another one was a school, another one was a hospital, just so they can kind of show us 3 different places that they've gone to look at and consider. So that's my homework for next week, is to give those folks a call and see what I can learn about this company, just to get some testimonials as to how their work is, how is it thorough, is it quality, is it, what did you wish that you had asked them along the way?
And just so everybody knows too, the one he's talking about, they're out of Binghamton. Am I allowed to say? I won't say who they are. It doesn't matter. But they provided us with an assessment that they did with the City of Binghamton School District. So to see that and how thorough they were, I mean, they were talking to business owners of neighboring, because it's more in like a downtown setting. So they not only assessed the school, but then talked to like the pizza shop across the street or the gas station over there, and how have the students interacted here, and like, so they seemed to be pretty thorough in their assessment of not only just the school, the grounds, but the community, the area, how our students are, if we had a spot that everybody went to after school, like how does that affect our campus, our students, everything. I was pretty impressed by it, and that was said the second option.
And the third of 3 options, to just kind of summarize each of them, the third of 3 options, in my opinion, and the scope that they provided to us, looked a lot to me like what Questar does for us every year when they come in and they do our fire extinguishers and they walk through the building and they look at it from that perspective. So just again, it was, like I said, very basic. It was the cheapest of the 3 by a long shot. I think that's why it was the cheapest. So.
Now, Ryan, the second company from Binghamton.
Yep.
That Kyle mentioned, they could do that by what date again?
April 17th, they can be here. And
This year?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So one of the, I'm not gonna say the nice things, I'm not trying to be selective of one company or another yet. I do wanna do the due diligence of calling them first, but if we were to have that assessment in hand by late April, early May, we could actually use that assessment as a supplemental piece on a grant that will pay for some of the suggestions that they're making. I think the cap that each entity was eligible for was up to $500,000 towards repairs or what have yous that are suggested in the assessment. So that would help us with that. So that's why I'm calling them next week, is because if they are good, I'd like to push forward with things. Any other questions?
We're gonna be talking about that when you have the information.
Yes. Oh yeah. I'm not firing forward with anything. I'll call you guys and we'll have that conversation first. Any other questions on adjustments before I move forward to what's already halfway on the screen?
Yeah.
My pie charts. Nothing. All right, so here's my pie charts. The thing that we're all going to gravitate towards the most here in our revenue discussion is the property tax cap. The cap was at 3.02%. I would suggest a balanced budget at 2.93%. Last year was 2.92%. The appropriated fund balance, that increased by $50,000. We've talked about why already. That was for the capital project. That is money that we're going to see in another form of revenue next year. State aid, we saw an increase. Other revenues, which we've talked about a bit, they're your pilots, they're your local funding or your local funds, et cetera, coming in. And then we've got a total budget of $36,030,000, which is a 3.8% budget increase total. Any questions on that?
What was the allowed again?
The allowed
tax cap?
3.02%. Last year was 4.21.
0.09 less.
Yes, yep. Any questions on that? Okay. And there's that other revenue section that I was talking to you about. I do want to focus on, does anybody have any questions about the pilot? I know we've talked about it a couple times already, why the pilot number's lower. Okay. So the appropriated reserves, you'll see a significant increase here. So appropriated reserves are basically monies that you would tap into at the, probably, I would hope, towards the end of your annual spendings, right? So we have a $36,030,000 budget, right? If we start approaching the final $250,000 of our budget, we will start withdrawing funds from an appropriated reserve. That could be your ERS reserve, your TRS reserve, so on and so forth. Yes, you folks would be, we would have that conversation before that happens. I will say, historically speaking, in the last 3 or 4 years, we have not tapped that at all. We haven't come close to that. We haven't come close to using it. What that figure is used for is really to help us balance a budget out. And what it also does, it's $150,000 less. I'm using that number because we went from $100,000 of appropriated reserves to $250,000. That's $150,000 less that we'd have to put on the tax levy. And so that really helped draw that tax levy total amount down by $150,000. But again, these are funds that we don't need to tap. We will likely not tap. And I will say, if we if we get within $250,000 of our total budgeted amount, that means something happened that cost an extraordinary amount of money. So I genuinely don't think we will tap it, but it's a way to help us balance the budget, but also keep our tax levy in check.
So you know that amount once the year ends?
No, which amount?
That if you're over or under. I mean, if you get close to 250, but if you're going to be over that, when do you know that amount?
Throughout the year.
Oh, so you know now?
I know right now that we have, we're X amount of dollars under the levy, and we've got X amount of, when I log into Envision, our finance manager software, the first thing that pops up is a pie chart and shows me what we've spent, what we have encumbered, and what's remaining of available funds.
Is there a time frame that you have to designate this?
No, it's one of those things where, obviously June 30th is the end of our fiscal year, but if we get into a need of this, it'll be an emergency board meeting, in not a good way.
But we would know the amount that we're putting in.
Taking out of a reserve and putting into to the general fund, yes.
But even after this budget, 22, 23, when would we know what's left over?
In the audit. That's what the audit does. The audit finalizes all of our, you mean in the general fund,
well,
right?
You said you have a software that tells you right away, so you
I do, but when the auditors come in, they come in and finalize and verify that yes, everything's up to muster, we're all good to go, all the transactions are accurate, which we haven't had any findings on that regard.
Yeah.
So I could say they're accurate, but 2 weeks or 2 months later when the audit's done, they may have found something that's, oh no, this $20,000 needs to be here. That was one of the things that we encountered last year, if you recall, with the federal grant money, is we had some things expended in the general fund that could have been in the federal grant money and vice versa, and it was mixing and matching, very common across schools in the state. So.
Ryan, when do the auditors come? Do we have a date?
This year they're coming in the June 16th and 17th for their preliminary work, and they're coming in to do their week-long audit. I think it's the first week in August. They haven't finalized the date. I just got rough estimated dates from them 2 weeks ago.
Ryan, is there a number on your pie chart that you would reach out to us we need that board meeting?
As a heads up,
Yeah.
if we get, I mean,
That one's delayed sometimes.
there we go. So if we get to a point where we've got this big of a budget and we're within, I would say within $2 million with 3 months to go, I might be getting a little nervous. If we are within $750,000 to $1 million with 1 month to go, I might be getting a little nervous. But thankfully, we haven't been in those places lately. But again, every day when I log in, I mean every day when I log into Envision, the first thing that pops up is that pie chart, and I just sit there. And every 2 weeks on payroll day, the slivers get a little smaller. I cringe a little bit. I'm like, we're good. So, but we're good. We're
Do you
good.
generally find that what your pie chart says matches what the audit does?
Yes. Yeah. With the exception of last year with the federal grants, because it's a different, the pie chart's only showing me what the general fund is doing, which is what we're voting on, whereas the audit came in, and because of the large amounts of money we got through the ARP grant, they looked at that as well.
Yeah.
Did anybody have, I think I covered all of these, appropriate reserves, yes. Any other questions on revenues? Or pie charts? I like them because they show us we're kind of following suit from what we did the year before. There's no major changes in salaries. There's no major changes in where we're placing our monies. Okay. All right, and here's just a couple of big ones. We'll get to sped in a minute. Salaries, fringes, debt, BOCES, transportation, and other. The question was asked. What are some significant pieces of the other category for expenditures? One of them is special education, particularly private placements. Somebody just say poor Katie? I think I heard it.
Don't pick on Nikki.
I would never. She's
People with
great.
special needs don't have to be born that way, so we do what we need.
I hear ya.
Thank you.
I tell her all the Katies in my life spend money. My wife's name is Katie. All right. Any questions here for me?
I have a question, and I emailed. Is the other also part of the lighthouse? And is the lighthouse, how much does that cost us? I know you sent us an email saying without BOCES aid, it's about 11,000.
Sure.
And after BOCES aid, it's about 5,200.
Sure.
Is that per person or is that total?
The district-wide.
So even our conferences, everything's included under that?
Yep. Okay. We have access to those conferences. We have access to professional development, both at the administrative, and if you want to jump in, the teachers have access to it, so on and so forth.
Okay, so it's only 5,200, and going to the conferences is included in that.
Well, I mean, the traveling and the hotels is not, but the registrations, depending on the conference, are or not. And then, but like when we go to the site visits, those are free.
Okay.
So like when I think Randy went down to Baldwin, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Randy went down to Baldwin on the island. That wasn't an added expense.
Can maybe you guys discuss this in the budget committee, can we get a total amount on how much it's costing us with?
Oh, with like the travel and stuff?
Yeah.
There was a lot of airfare. I mean, that could be a separate conversation, but there was a lot of people traveling all over the place.
Well, why did it separate out? Because there's conferences that have nothing to do with this, too.
Right,
Okay.
right.
That's
Yeah,
not,
like we had.
Right, but is there somehow we can get that figure? I'm just concerned about it. Okay, thank you.
You mean the lighthouse, airfare, hotel
Well, I think
expenditure,
that
just
was-
on that specific?
Yes.
Yes.
Only because it's so controversial that I think we need to know how much we're spending
On
on
that
this.
specific.
Yes.
Well, that was inclusive. That keep in mind that what we spent last year was inclusive of our federal grant. That's what it was for.
Okay.
When we applied for that grant, Carrie, if you want to jump in on that part of it, when we applied for that section of the grant, warranted $30,000 for us to spend, and we had listed 3 different vendors, ASA being one of the 3, that were pre-approved for that $30,000 for us to spend on those on those trainings. That's what that $30,000 went towards.
Okay, what about next year, the year after?
We haven't planned next year or the year after yet. So I would venture to say we're probably not spending $30,000 a year on one thing. I think we did that because that's what the money was earmarked for. So.
Moving forward with the lighthouse expenditures,
I would, and I don't mean to correct you, but I would use AASA because lighthouse is really the name of the award and the designation more so than like AASA is the body that we're a part of and what we attend. Lighthouse is the name of the award and the designation that we were given because we do what we do.
but moving forward, any expenditures for lodging, airfare, that's a budgeted line item already in the budget.
Yes.
Under a separate.
But it's not designated to just AASA.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. But we budget for it.
Correct. Yes.
For professional development.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
We did talk about that in the committee too. The grant, and that's what you're spending it for and what we get back for it. Actually, the 5280 amount is pretty low in terms of in terms of buying professional development programs or being a part of some kind of entity. I've heard of much higher numbers.
So have I.
In other places. And then we talked about what do we get for it. And I don't know if you want to mention it, but it's the conference, but it's
the conference.
Professional development throughout the year.
Yes, we get monthly virtual workshops with colleagues across the country. We're all concerned about coming out of the pandemic and how we're going to support kids and staff coming out of it, how we're going to, change our schools for the better for kids as we go forward. So we have that access. So I say we, the district, we have access to that multiple times. There's a main one each month, but then there's several, I'll call it like sub categories. So if you're interested in readiness and redefining ready, you can attend those virtually, or if you're interested in student well-being, we have those. There's some other ones, just, innovative practices, so people attend those virtually and learn from each other, throughout the year and just share best practices and, from across the country. We're not limiting ourselves to just our region anymore.
Well, we talked about too that is it newer teachers that have a requirement to do CEUs, 175 and 5 years, and that attending these trainings can fulfill that obligation. And we don't charge the teachers for that, I take it. Some entities will charge for
the teachers to pay on their own.
CEUs, yeah, but we don't, which is a nice perk that otherwise people have to buy it.
Pretty good. Okay. There's your big five. You've seen this before. Just wanted to show it to you with the finalized budgeted number. Any questions on that? There's your balanced budget. All the way through, we've got our general fund broken up into your expenditures and your revenues, which are balanced, all at 3.8% increase, and then your finalized tax levy at that $19,812,527, a 2.93% increase from last year. Any questions for me there? Great, and just a couple Q&As that I had thought of prematurely before our meeting is, okay, so we have a New York State budget, it's late. Can we adopt the budget even though the New York State budget is late? The answer is yes. If you guys think back to a number of years ago, the New York State budget wasn't getting passed until June or July, and schools still had to vote on a budget by mid-May. So yes, we can do that. We can definitely adopt a budget. Why is it late? From what I'm reading, it has nothing to do with education. It has more to do with bail reform rules and new housing. Trends are showing that the executive budget, what we already have, is lower than that of what we get out of the legislative budget. Randy and myself are not overly optimistic we're gonna see much more money, if any. So I think what we have is pretty much what we get. But what happens if we do get additional revenue? Where does that go? That goes back to that appropriated reserves number, okay? So we would just work that down essentially. You're basically taking money here and putting it here instead. That's all it is. It's an even swap. It's not going to change anything for anybody. Any questions for me there? Okay. What I miss? Any questions?